welcome to the Biohackers live show.
Oh, my morning routine. Yeah, well, I would say that today was a slightly different morning routine than usual because I'm here. So I was traveling from home in Estonia to Helsinki. But yeah, like most of the things I did were just trying to kickstart my circadian rhythm and just prepare for the traveling. But yeah, usually I don't really have like a specific type of morning routine anymore that I do because I feel I don't need it, or I just adjust it based on the day and based on what I'm going to do like for the rest of the day.
Yeah. That seems to be with a lot of biohackers that we start first pretty dogmatic about things and we don't compromise in terms of diet or lifestyle or patterns. And that's kind of how we also calm down the anxiety inside of us, the animal inside of us that's kind of distracted all the time with a lot of things. So we get into routines and we try to focus on a specific thing like morning routines or work routines, and that's what we dive into. And as we progress, just like taking up any martial art, for example, first you imitate the master, and once you're beyond that stage, you start to kind of create your own art. And that's when you're wiser in terms of diet. You don't just follow a rigorous diet, but you're thinking, what am I doing today? Okay, I'm traveling, so I will have a different feeding pattern and maybe dietary choices than on a day when I would be exercising or working in front of my computer. Is that right?
Yeah, for sure. But I do think like routines and this, let's say, disciplines, they're still crucial, and you do need to develop them and build them in order to achieve that freedom in the first place. Because if you go like, okay, I'm just gonna not care about anything and I'm gonna be like this, leaf in the wind and don't have any discipline, then you're just kind of lying to yourself, and you don't really, you wouldn't be able to turn on the discipline when it's needed, so to say. So it's almost like a flowing thing that you do have the ability to be very strict and very follow the routine, whether that be in regards to a diet or your productivity routines, whatever they may be, but you're at the same time still somewhat able to understand the dichotomy, in a sense that it's not always best to be very strict. Sometimes it's actually best to be somewhat of a flower and be less strict.
So I guess flow state is what many of us try to access, is when we in our day get as much focused time in the things that we're passionate about, and when we lose our sense of time. We discussed that with Max Gotzler in our previous Bikers live show. We also discussed about intermittent working periods through Pomodoro techniques and all of that. Like, do you practice yourself? I mean, you have written 2 pretty huge books. So I'll show it to our Instagram live feed. So there's the Metabolic Autophagy book. It's a big book. Check it out on Amazon. And then there's the Metabolic Autophagy cookbook that's just work in progress, I guess, right now. Is it available already?
It's already available, yeah. And
okay, cool.
It's almost like a sequel to the first one, just an addition.
And you've written like 4 other books in addition to these. And you're also, I mean, many people describe you as the prodigy of biohacking. So despite your young age, you achieved a lot, and you're already beyond the stage of being dogmatic about your daily routines even. So what's your secret?
Well, I think my kind of secret is, again, like these very daily disciplines and habits that at the moment I'm just doing automatically and without any like effort. But in the past, they did require to, this consistency and changing your habits in some certain ways to achieve this level of like productivity, automatic productivity in a sense. And what I do is generally I just focus a lot on daily uninterrupted work, where I'm like solely focused on doing this work related to like content creation or something else that I'm doing. And I think that's where kind of the most of the magic is also coming from. You're not being like distracted from different things. You're not, looking at Facebook. You're not on social media and chatting with someone else. You're actually just completely honed into whatever you're doing. And I feel that's where most of your like creativity is also accessed much more easily, just because you're you enter the flow state. And the kind of definition or one of the characteristics of flow is this loss of sense of time and loss of sense of self. So you're almost like completely in a different realm in this sense.
Right. So what are the things that you have struggled with in terms of interruptions?
Well, I live like I've been very diligent and very careful about how I construct my environment and my surroundings. So I live, at a very peaceful place, which is like a small island in Estonia, and it's very distinct from, the noise of urban environments, etc. And I do it deliberately in a sense because I feel like your environment is going to reflect your personal psychology a lot as well, especially like the mental activity.
Certainly.
So if you like, that's why the big cities are somewhat hyperactive and people are more stressed out in the city because not only like because of the environmental pollution, etc., but just caught up in the pace of life.
So you are 23, and I understand that your dream is not really to move to a city like many other people living in Estonia, young guys like you. They probably think of moving out of Estonia to a big city, New York maybe, or Paris or London, and strike it big, maybe in Silicon Valley in a tech industry. But you want to live on a freaking island.
Well, I think so. Yeah, that's gonna be pretty big. Like I'm already living at a spot where I would imagine that most people would want to end up in the future. Like if they try to settle down for a family, or if they have achieved a lot of great things in their business or in their personal productivity success, then that would be something that all people would kind of gravitate towards in some aspects, like just kind of a peaceful, blissful living.
Right. Sure. Well, you have written a few books about metabolic autophagy, and maybe if you give a quick description about autophagy, and I mean that's related to ketogenic diet. It's related to the way how our body is recycling damaged cells, and there's many benefits to this. Before we move into metabolic flexibility, like how you can have higher performance, more energy, and optimal health, which is going to be the topic today. So if you dive us deep, briefly into the processes that also gave the title for your book.
Right. Well, if you look at the title, then the kind of two components are metabolic and autophagy. And metabolic refers to just the metabolism, which is kind of the life-sustaining processes that your body goes through for creating energy and surviving, in a sense, converting the calories from a food into energy and using it to repair your tissue and just replicate your cells, etc. But the process of autophagy is almost it's a part of the metabolic processes, but it translates into self-eating or eating of self. And this usually it happens during these periods where your body is actually deprived of the nutrients that it has access to and is undergoing like energy stress and energy deprivation. So it's like almost like a survival mechanism that enables the body to recycle some of the old and worn out cell components.
So the body is going after the stuff that doesn't function very well anymore.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Basically, suddenly it has a brief moment where it doesn't have abundance of carbohydrates or whatever food sources for energy, but it needs to start eating itself out. So instead of eating the healthy tissues and cells, it goes after the damaged ones. That's kind of, I guess, kind of the point.
That's the point. Yeah, and in some aspects there is some autophagy happening almost all the time. In like there's different types of autophagy, different degrees in different tissues, etc. But the point is that during like these more demanding situations, more depriving situations where your body is actually under real stress, then it will go into like a deeper state of autophagy that has like many other benefits, such as like reduced inflammation, fights oxidative stress, helps to clear out all the waste material, and it's even seen that the process of autophagy in the brain is used or it's effective for preventing the accumulation of plaque, which is associated with Alzheimer's. There's also a thing that insulin resistance in some aspects is caused by deficient autophagy, and even heart disease as well, like atherosclerosis, is caused by deficient autophagy. And aging in general is a process of not enough autophagy in some sense, and autophagy is like a central part of those many pathways that are related to longevity.
Right. So things like becoming insulin resistant, cancers, Alzheimer's, where amyloid plaque is accumulating in your brain, all of that can be alleviated by putting yourself briefly into an energy crisis. So instead of having abundance of energy, you go to a state where your body goes like, oh, there's a cancer cell, I'm going to eat that. Okay, so there's a damaged cell, I'm going to use that. And you give a brief moment for your metabolism also to go into more of a recovery mode. I guess when you pump your system on a constant basis full of nutrients and food that increase inflammation, and the body is fighting inflammation instead of recovering from it. So
it's in some aspects it's almost like bringing your body back to balance and bringing it back to the homeostasis where it's supposed to function best at. So in the modern world, we're kind of exposed to excess amounts of calories, too much food, and too high eating frequency without enough of the nutritional stress, such as periods of famine and under nutrition. So in a sense, the autophagy is supposed to kind of make your body function at its optimal, where it's best at, in the center, like in the balanced, not overly fed but not underly nourished either, like that's where like most of the benefits are come from.
In healthy lifestyle, seems like the balance is key here. I just had a discussion with Kasper van der Meulen about breathing, how it's important to spend as much time as you spend in sympathetic nervous system activated state to spend also in a parasympathetic nervous system activated state, to use breathing in a way that is linked to, he described it beautifully, how it's linked to glucose utilization, and how all these different moments play into maintaining a steady and balanced homeostasis in the body. So autophagy seems to be one, and I guess one of the kind of key triggers for autophagy is dietary intervention.
It's one of the few ways of doing it. Like I said earlier, like there is some autophagy happening almost all the time. It's just that certain activities will accelerate a process and enable the body go into it faster, in some sense, by depriving your body from energy and putting like higher energetic demands onto your system. And like dietary strategies is probably the most easily accessible ones, because nutrition and calories, they affect the metabolism directly, and they affect certain pathways that regulate autophagy directly as well, such as either being fed or being in a fasted state. So like I said, being overly fed is more like towards growing and accumulating mass, but the other opposite end is like being more catabolic, where you're breaking down, and that's more towards the end of autophagy and self-recycling. So with a diet, if you're eating something, that's inevitably going to put you into the fed state, and how far off you're going to go into the anabolic state, that depends on like the macronutrient ratios of the food and how many calories you're eating as well. Whereas if you're fasting, you're not consuming any calories, then that's far off to the catabolic side, because you're not eating anything, and that's where your body goes, okay, we're not getting the food, so we therefore have to go inside.
Right. So okay, ketogenic diets, those are big topics and trendy things. In Finland, we just released a Biohacker's Guide to Ketosis. It's coming out, by the way, in English also pretty soon, so follow up Biohacker's Handbook, Instagram channel, and Facebook, and our newsletter, and you will know when it comes out. We put together in one book kind of the top level research when it comes to ketogenic diets. Now, why is keto such a trendy thing now, and how it's linked to autophagy, and why should people who are looking into getting more of that cell recycling benefits and maybe getting into metabolic flexibility pay attention to high fat, low carb diets which are high in fiber and micronutrients?
Well, to start off, I would say that the reason why people would want to go out of their way to actually try to promote more autophagy in their life is that we're not experiencing those periods of famine anymore, and it's very common for people in the Western world to never experience the feeling of hunger, and to never actually go through periods where they're actually going into like a deeper state of fasting and autophagy. So I think just as again, like implementing certain strategies in regards to nutrition and intermittent fasting into your life is almost like a routine. You create a routine and you use that routine to gain those benefits that you wouldn't otherwise get. So the best kind of way in regards to nutrition, the best way to promote autophagy is to just fast and not eat anything. But there are also certain like macronutrients and certain foods that can also affect this process, or at least they're going to determine how well your body is going to enable to go into autophagy and how flexible your body is in burning different fuel sources. So a ketogenic diet in itself mimics some of the physiology of fasting, such as like it's going to suppress your insulin, you're keeping your blood sugar more stable, and you're producing ketone bodies, which are energy molecules derived from your own body fat, and that's just mimics some of the aspects of fasting. And it also elevates this fuel sensor called AMPK, which is a fat burning fuel sensor essentially, or a catabolic fuel sensor that promotes all these things related to cell recycling. With a ketogenic diet, you're just like in some aspects you're also just incorporating some of the ideas of hunter-gatherer living as well. Like hunter-gatherers, they didn't actually consume a whole bunch of carbs all the time, and they definitely didn't eat breads and pastries on a daily basis. So that's the idea of combining some aspects of a ketogenic diet, at least in a cyclical manner, and with intermittent fasting, you're kind of just teaching your body to use these pathways that you don't get in the standard way of living and in the standard diet.
Right. So you're mimicking some aspects of fasting, but it's not exactly the same thing as fasting. You are activating some things that are beneficial for recycling your cells and putting your body into more of a mode of recovery.
Right.
And so tell us a little bit about like your own experience of doing this. So autophagy might be contributing to, and is based on science, contributing to longevity. You won't be necessarily being able to feel that. I mean, you age, and it's a much longer process. But what is the daily subjectively felt benefits of implementing all the strategies that lead to upregulating autophagy?
Well, I think that a lot of people who are doing, let's say, some form of intermittent fasting, then the immediate benefits they may notice is just like mental clarity, which is partly due to the ketogenic metabolism and using ketones as an alternative for the brain. But at the same time, there's also like, you probably one of the reasons people do intermittent fasting is for fat loss or autophagy and / longevity. So you will be probably able to lose some weight with it as well, as long as you just practice a calorie deficit at the same time. So it makes easier to adhere to a calorie deficit for some people, just because like if you confine your eating window into certain hours, then it's going to be harder for you to overeat. You have less time to screw things up in a sense that if you eat your calories only within, let's say, 6 to 4 hours, for example, then you can only fit like maybe two meals at best. Versus if you were to graze throughout the entire day, then you can have like more opportunities to eat, and that's just going to add up all to the daily caloric intake. And that's one of the ways it can be used for fat loss. But there's also like unique metabolic effects to time restricted eating and intermittent fasting that you don't, besides just fat loss, such as like it also affects, it has epigenetic effects and activates certain things like sirtuin genes and FOXO proteins, which are also.
Wait a minute. Tell us why should I activate FOXO3? Why should I activate sirtuins?
Right. Well, first, FOXO proteins are these longevity-related proteins that get activated under energy stress as well, and they enable the body to adapt to environmental stressors much better, such as the cold, heat, nutritional stressors, and in a sense, they also kind of promote autophagy, not directly, but indirectly in the same manner by just depleting the body from energy. And sirtuins are also another like very, very popular longevity genes that seem to increase lifespan by, again, suppressing some of the anabolic pathways and keeping the body more towards the catabolic side, where where it's not causing like excess inflammation from excess energy. It's brings the body back towards like homeostasis.
Yeah. So when I increase my intake of protein, carbohydrates, I go to the gym, I'm working out like crazy, I activate IGF-1, for example, more of the anabolic side of things. So for growth, I get some muscle and muscle mass and all that. We often think that people who are like super pumped, that they're super healthy. Would you agree on this?
Well, it's like a very context dependent. Like it is a lot true that more muscle mass and a healthier, like leaner body composition is very correlated with longevity and general health. Like a lot of people who are fit physically, they are healthier because they have less body fat, they have less visceral fat especially, and they have more muscle mass, which is a good thing for longevity, because muscle is almost like like an equalizer, a complete equalizer, in terms of you can get away with a lot more calories, you're more insulin sensitive, your body can metabolize glucose and the carbs a lot better. You won't go into like these very inflammatory states, because your body is very capable of metabolizing the fuel that you eat. And definitely someone who doesn't have any muscle mass, although they may be leaner in some aspects, or they may have like lower body fat, it doesn't mean that they're healthier, because they don't have the muscle mass which would equalize all those effects in terms of being able to metabolize different fuel sources. So generally, slightly more muscle is better, but only to a certain extent. Like if you start pushing it beyond your body's natural capacity, or if you're just using, I don't know, certain other agents that make you more anabolic, then that can just not be ideal. Again, like I would say that the far extremes are the kind of the worst. Like huge bodybuilder is probably not the best for longevity, and a very skinny frail guy is probably not the best for longevity either. So you want to again see some more balance in the middle of having enough muscle mass but not being deficient either.
Yeah, Peter Attia, a doctor from the US who is kind of specializing in many of these topics, is also talking about the fact that when you have enough lean muscle mass, you are less likely to get diabetes, because you have much more places to dump all that excess carbohydrates. So actually the insulin resistance in cells starts to show up, the damage starts to show up in large muscles first. So if you don't want to hit your organs, you build first, you want to build some lean muscle mass.
Exactly. Like all of the diseases, most of the modern diseases are caused by excess energy on the body, and what is excess energy is very context dependent to the individual. So like you said, more muscle, the more muscle mass you have, the more energy you can dump into your system without causing damage, versus someone who is very like a smaller frame, or they have like a very slow metabolic rate, then the room for error for them is also much smaller, because they don't have the muscle mass that would equalize those effects.
So that would be one way to build flexibility, is to have some muscle mass.
Exactly. And resistance training, which is the way you build muscle, that's also like a very good activity to facilitate those benefits.
What do you think about cardio? So I guess like running too much, like marathons and triathlon, is also kind of damaging, and not doing it at all is not good either. So I know you're a big proponent of resistance training, but what is your take on just going for a run?
I think cardio is great, but the cardio, it does benefit. It seems to benefit a lot of like cardiovascular fitness and aerobic fitness, which is great for in some aspects. It promotes heart health and blood flow, but at the same time, people who are doing a bunch of cardio, they may not be necessarily the healthiest, either because of doing the wrong type of cardio or doing it too much. So it's easy to really overdo it and cause excess stress on your body. And at the same time, I think that cardio, the adaptations you get from cardio, they aren't long-term, in a sense that you can go run a few miles, you can burn like a few hundred calories doing that, but your body doesn't really change other than the aerobic fitness. Versus if you were to lift weights for like an hour or two, and then afterwards your body would get stronger and build muscle, then that muscle, that added muscle will also increase your metabolic flexibility, and it would increase your insulin sensitivity in the long term, because you have now more muscle in the future, versus in the adaptations you get from the cardio, there wouldn't be like that long term. You would only adapt to the extent of, okay, I burned that many calories during the cardio period, and whether or not you're going to, your body will get better at aerobics, but you wouldn't gain those increased insulin sensitivity like weeks upon weeks afterwards. Whereas having that muscle makes you more insulin sensitive, weeks down the line and several months afterwards, because you have that extra muscle.
If we jump into metabolic flexibility, it's often thrown around as a term that enables you to use 2 different fuel sources simultaneously and easily switch between the two. So basically, glucose from carbohydrates and ketone bodies from fat. Now, in my understanding, you need first to adapt your body to be able to utilize fats as a fuel source before you can get into this flexible state. So can you kind of dive us a little bit deeper into that?
Yeah, sure. Like I said, metabolic flexibility is, described to be able to use different fuel sources based upon what the body needs and what kind of fuel is actually in the system at that particular moment. And generally I would say that, the problem in the modern world is that people are burning carbs all the time and glucose. They're very glucose dependent, and that's also one of the reasons why people eat so frequently. They need to keep their energy levels high. Their body is dependent of glucose in a certain extent, but the problem is that the body can only store a certain amount of glucose in the body, because it can be stored only as glycogen, and generally it's about 2,000 calories.
How about fatty liver?
Well, I'm not sure how easily it's going to be to use fat from the liver, but it's going to take a longer time to heal that condition. But the idea is that if you're just burning carbs and glucose all the time, then you're not really flexible, because you're dependent of the carbs and you're dependent of meal timing constantly. So whenever you get low, you haven't eaten in a few hours, your blood sugar drops, you experience an energy crash, you get brain fog, etc. But you don't get that if your body would be flexible.
Right. Yeah. So adapting into a ketogenic diet, and to be able to utilize ketones and also on the brain level, so that you don't get like low energy and all that, so that you're able to tap into that fuel source. Now, people report some side effects of that, like for example, irritation, nervousness, maybe some headaches even, or flu type of symptoms, and all of that. Are those things that some individuals just can't adapt to it because of genetic reasons or some other reasons, or is that everyone can do this, and when everyone does it, can they somehow avoid some of the at least early symptoms of adaptation?
Well, generally, like every like human should be able to burn fat and go into ketosis, because it's almost like part and parcel to our evolutionary biology. And like even babies, when they're born, they're actually in ketosis, and they need ketosis to survive those initial periods. And one of the reasons why people may not be able to go into ketosis or get over this kind of barrier is this withdrawal symptoms from the carbs. So it's inevitable that if you're used to eating a bunch of carbs very frequently, then it's going to take like a short period of time where you do experience mild, these withdrawal symptoms and energy crises. And the way you overcome that is just, there were several ways of going about it, but
getting a burger.
Fixing that sugar craving, that's not going to be helpful in the long term. But you can definitely speed up the process with things like intermittent fasting, maybe going for like a longer fast even, because fasting kind of forces ketosis and forces your body to start using the body fat. And even like exercise or like cardio is a good example of actually being able to burn through the glycogen, liver glycogen, and then going and starting to produce ketone bodies more efficiently. So that's an example of that. But even like increasing your salt intake and other electrolytes, that's a great way to avoid some of the symptoms of the keto flu, because your body may lose some of its electrolytes if you're in a low carb low carb ketogenic state with which is characterized by lower insulin as well.
So keto doesn't go very well with low salt intake,
Yeah.
for example. So people are afraid sometimes because of salt, because of high blood pressure. But if you go for a ketogenic diet, you shouldn't be that afraid of salt, because the body just works differently than in a carbohydrate.
If you're eating carbs, then your body also retains more water because of the higher levels of insulin. But if you don't eat the carbs, then your body releases less insulin, and in so doing the kidneys hold onto less water, and you tend to lose some of the electrolytes if you don't replace them with supplementation or adding some salt and eating some foods.
Yeah, let's check our live stream here. Is anyone here? If someone has a question, just post here, and we are happy to ask our guest here. Oh, there's a lot of people here coming in and out. So if you have any questions to Siim, he's ready for your questions.
Yeah, that's good.
Also, so anyway, I have a question. When it comes to, you wrote a book, Metabolic Autophagy Cookbook. How would this be different from something like a keto diet book?
Or that's a good point. And in a sense, I think the purpose of the keto diet for most people isn't to be in strict ketosis. Like I said, they're probably doing it for fat loss, mental clarity, just adherence, and increased satiety. So the ketogenic diet originally was invented for epileptic children, and they needed to stay in ketosis without fasting to kind of mimic the fasting physiology while still eating and being able to nourish themselves. So most people, they don't have those reasons. They don't have huge cancer or epilepsy or some other very severe insulin resistance, and they're still just doing keto for fun almost, and because of its suits their lifestyle. And in that case, you don't need to be in strict therapeutic ketosis all the time either. What you want instead is keto adaptation. So keto adaptation is slightly different from the state of ketosis. The state of ketosis is more characterized by the amount of ketones in your bloodstream and the energy molecules that your body uses. Whereas keto adaptation is more related to the ability to use fat and ketones as a fuel source.
Right.
So it's like being able to just tap into your fat stores and without having to suffer through the adaptation phase and without suffering keto flu. So in a sense, keto adaptation is a form of metabolic flexibility that your body has gone through.
Yeah.
And then you're more flexible afterwards, being able to swap between different fuel sources, because I think that it's not that sustainable to be, and it's not necessary to be eating keto all the time to maintain the benefits of keto adaptation.
Especially for ladies, I've understood.
Yeah, well, I've also seen some interesting things that in terms of females who just seem to do better with a bit of more carbs during some periods of the year, for instance, during the menstrual cycles or such. And if they go low carb too long, then that puts excessive stress on their system.
Yeah, sometimes periods go away and a lot of crazy things.
And even for men, chronic ketosis all the time may not be ideal, because of it may downregulate thyroid functioning a little bit, and it may keep the body in this constant state of energy deprivation, because in nature there isn't no keto diet. In nature there's only fasting and then just scraping for some food, which keeps the body in a state of ketosis and keto adapted.
Right. So if people want to start doing some of these things, what's your advice? Should they go for keto for a while, and once they're beyond that phase, they can go into more cyclical ketogenic diet? And is that more related to metabolic autophagy then?
Yeah, I think it depends a lot on the goals and the particular individual. Of course, if someone has diabetes, of course, if someone is slightly insulin resistant, or they're trying to fix some of their metabolic issues, then I wouldn't recommend really going for carbs or eating something like that. For them, it's gonna be more on the side of, okay, I have to stay in ketosis more often because my body needs to heal itself.
Unless you're fully diagnosed diabetic and you can get some serious health I mean, how likely it is. I mean, we are not giving any medical advice here, right?
sure.
We're not doctors. We're just some fools here in studio live streaming who've been reading a lot of stuff on the internet and research papers. So if you're diagnosed that you're diabetic and your pancreas is not able to produce insulin, and you plan to go on a ketogenic diet, I've read that those people can probably lower their insulin injections because they don't need that much insulin then. So that's one way to kind of lower some of the cost also of medication in that case. But you shouldn't necessarily stop your medication on a keto diet. Although, I mean, if you go on if you are on strict supervision by a doctor, you might be able to use that, especially in the pre-diabetic phase, to really help your body to heal and get back to normal glucose metabolism.
Yeah, I think it's also like depends on like how fast do you want to get well. Like you can actually accelerate the healing process by going for like longer fasts, because nothing treats, in my opinion, like nothing treats better the glucose irregulation and high blood glucose than just fasting.
Yeah.
Because excess blood glucose indicates excess sugar in the bloodstream. So if you burn through that glucose with fasting and not eating anything, then you will be probably able to lower the glucose better, and then the autophagy process can also heal the pancreas and enable you, make you more insulin sensitive again in the future.
Oh, super. So what is the longest fast you've done, like for autophagy?
Well, the longest I've done is like 7 days, like weekly thing. But I haven't done it in a few years, and at the moment I'm just focusing maybe on like a few of these three-day fasts a few times a year. And I think that more isn't necessarily better. Like if you don't have any serious condition, then there's not going to be any reason to go any longer. And when it comes to autophagy, then there's also like a point of diminishing returns. Like you're not going to gain significantly more autophagy after day 5. And
I see.
Like if you fast for 10 days, then you're probably not going to get like a huge.
So there might be a little bit more stress on your organs.
Yeah,
and all that. So
it's a matter of, longer fasts are great, but more frequent fasts that are slightly shorter are better, because you're able to punctuate it more frequently in a sense. Imagine if you fast only for 7 days once a year, you're going to get only 7 days of fasting for that year. But if you do 3-day fasts, every month, then you're going to get 15 fasts or 15 days of fasting, etc. The frequency is actually much better, and consistency. Because the longer fasts, you do the longer fasts, but they put also more stress on the body, especially in terms of catabolism and maintaining muscle mass, and they're harder to recover from. Versus a 2-day fast, 48-hour fast, it's not going to affect you. It's not going to affect your muscle mass almost at all, and you're going to be able to bounce back from it really quick. And you can even do like 48-hour fasts, eat for 1 day and go back for another 48-hour fast, because it's not that stressful, but you do still gain some of the benefits of the fasted state, and you go into like a deeper autophagy as well.
Okay, so I have a question that is related to this lifestyle that you've gone into. Now you've done these long fasts, and what have you learned while doing those things, like personally? Like, have you written all these books while you're in a fasted state? Suddenly you have a lot of more time? Or
well, I think it's one of my secrets is the fasting very frequently and intermittent fasting daily. So first of all, there is this just increased productivity in terms of not having to be thinking about food, and in terms of just not being focused on calories and so on, just focusing on the things that I actually need to do. And of course, I think there is maybe the aspect of increased ketosis, which also promotes brain activity, and I feel very focused and mentally clear during the fasted state. So in a sense, it's a combination of like the increased brain power on a physical level, but at the same time also the mental discipline and mental consistency in a sense, because at first it may be somewhat more difficult for someone to actually start to do all these fasting things.
For sure.
It's because they haven't, conditioned their body to be able to handle it. But after it, the initial adaptation period does require more discipline and consistency. So in a sense, it's a great way of like abstaining from things, which is like very correlative to other aspects of your life as well. If you're able to stick to a diet, then you're able to be you will be more likely to stick to your goals and your other routines and habits much better, because it's neuroplasticity almost, like your brain adapts to what you do. And if you're very you fall off the rails all the time, you give in to temptations, or you procrastinate on purpose, then those things, they will rub off onto other areas of your life. You're gonna slack off in your relationship, you're gonna slack off in your business or whatever it is, so your brain doesn't really tell the difference.
There's a question on Facebook. Christian is asking, what are your favorite supplements for keto and intermittent fasting? So I guess you can just survive nicely with just food alone, but if you went for some supplements, what would you use, and what do you think about these so-called keto supplements, like exogenous ketones and all that?
Right.
Like, can you cheat?
Yeah, well, I would say that, well, first of all, like, nothing replaces a poor diet. No supplement is gonna fix like a poor diet. If you're deficient in certain, like, the essential nutrients, then you have to first fix the diet and make sure that you eat the right foods for that. In general, like, there are still some supplements that I think would be very beneficial for both ketosis and fasting. And I think a lot of people are deficient in things like vitamin D and magnesium, which are probably the most common deficiencies, and using some supplements to fix that can be useful. But again, you have to still focus on the lifestyle change. Like, if you're not getting enough if you're vitamin D deficient, then it's probably a sign of you're not getting enough sunlight, and that's the most bioavailable form of getting vitamin D. Then maybe I would also, like, quote unquote actual supplements that you wouldn't get from food would be some form of like a digestive enzyme. Like, even for people who don't have any digestive problems, I feel like digestive enzymes can be somewhat useful for clearing out the bloodstream from excess energy, and in so doing, like, promoting autophagy as well, because autophagy is regulated by the amount of energy in your bloodstream, and digestive enzymes are these enzymes that help to break down the nutrients and the food particles. So you would digest your food better, you would have less undigested food particles, and you would essentially digest the food faster as well. So
I see. Yeah.
Using some form of digestive enzymes, like, that's what I'm doing at the moment. Recently, I've been experimenting with some digestive enzymes, and I noticed that, okay, I feel that the food is digested much faster, even if it's like healthy food. And my own rationale is that also enables the body to go into autophagy faster.
Right. So there's a bunch of discussion also on your YouTube channel. I'm checking out what's going on there. Some people, there's someone who said they got some food allergies of doing 3-day fast, like allergic reaction to almonds and avocado. Now, did they just eat away their gut lining, or did they snack on almonds and avocado thinking that they're on a fast, or what's going on here?
Well, food allergies I think they may be caused, yes, by like intestinal impermeability in some aspects. And during a fast, it is true that your intestinal lining may thinnen a little bit, just because you're not eating, and you're like slightly acidic because of like not eating the food. So in some sense, I wouldn't like recommend breaking the fast with like these slightly allergenic foods, such as almonds, or even like raw eggs can cause some problems for people if they break a fast with it. So I like maybe like breaking a fast with something that stimulates the digestion, but it still like promotes gut healing, like a bone broth. That's my favorite way of breaking a fast, because it's gonna start to repair the gut lining, and it makes the body more resilient against all the foods that you will eat afterwards.
Yeah, some collagen also throwing in there, maybe some glycine for gut repair. Now, if someone has some question, like on Siim's YouTube channel, that's also possible. But I have one question about, like, are there any like specific supplement brands that you go for, like doing all these things? Like
generally, like no, not really. Like there isn't a specific brand that has like everything that you need. I think like you would probably have to combine certain like different brands, and yeah, I don't have like a huge bias or something.
I gotcha. Okay, good, awesome. So what do you think about time restricted eating? So would that amplify metabolic autophagy by avoiding eating after sunset?
Yeah, like definitely, like time restricted eating is a form of intermittent fasting. Like when most people refer to intermittent fasting, then they're actually talking about time restricted eating. But during the actual fasting phase, that's where your body is facilitating autophagy, which actually most of the autophagy process occurs during sleep, so to say. So what you do during the day, that's going to prepare the body for the repair processes that are going to take effect during sleep. And that's where during sleep, your body also raises growth hormone and increases melatonin levels as well. So melatonin is an important hormone for modulating a lot of the repair processes, such as growth hormone as well as autophagy. So if your sleep quality sucks, then you're not getting the most bang for your buck when it comes to autophagy. So you would probably have to focus a lot more on optimizing your sleep before you're thinking that you're extending your lifespan with fasting as such, because the sleep is probably more important. With that being said, things like eating too late in the evening can, in some aspects, inhibit that process a little bit, because if you have like a lot of food in your system when you're about to go to bed, then your body just has to burn through those calories first before it can start repairing itself. You know,
and there's also the whole process of how melatonin influences
exactly.
Pancreas and insulin release. So melatonin secretion blocks insulin release, and then you get increased risk for insulin resistance building up. So yeah,
but I think it's a matter of, again, context. If a person is not doing any time restricted eating, they're eating 3 square meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then like a late night snack, then that's the worst situation, because you're staying in the fed state all the time. Versus someone who is doing like they maybe eat only like lunch and dinner, or just dinner or something, then they're still fasting most of the day. And for them, that's not going to be that big of an issue, because their body is already so insulin sensitive, and that's not going to be that affected that much. Of course, I don't really think it's a good idea to be eating when it's dark outside, or like immediately before going to bed. You still want to have like this buffer zone at least a few hours before when you stop eating before going to bed. So yeah, like there's these many aspects that affect this, but generally I think waiting for maybe 2 to 4 hours at minimum is the kind of minimum dose before you want to stop eating before going to bed.
Okay, gotcha. So yeah, I mean, there are some routines. We have to let our video guy go soon, and for that reason, we are coming to the end of this. I've been live streaming for 3 hours now. This
That's awesome.
putting a tax on my fasting, so I'm hungry actually. So my question to you is regarding Biohacker Summit that's coming on the 1st and 2nd of November in Helsinki, Finland. So check out biohacker.to/2019 or just biohackersummit.com. Check out. You can still sign up. In July, you get cheap discount and cheap tickets to get access to the best conference we have put together so far. It's coming really nicely together. And Siim is going to be there. One of the keynotes. Actually, kind of launching some books and stuff, first time in a conference. So you have one of the morning keynotes, actually, I think. So what are you going to be sharing there? Why should people come to Biohacker Summit? You came to one of our events in, I think, 2016 first. And
that was the first one,
yeah, you've been coming back on a regular basis, and you helped also to organize the Tallinn Biohacker Summit. Now, what should people expect if they come?
Well, I think, first of all, like you said, I think, in my opinion, it's the best or the top biohacking conferences in the world, because you literally bring together these experts and people in the various fields in the field of health optimization and biohacking. So I think, for most people, that's going to be a really knowledgeable experience, and like even just the mere fact of being around these smart people is going to help you to incorporate some of the same principles that they follow into your life. Like, you're just going to go home very motivated, and you're going to make new friends. Like the first time I went to, I'm still contacted with the people that I met at the first Biohacker Summit I went to. Right. So it's definitely, and one of the reasons we're working together as well is because I went there and I made this video and after movie about the event. So it was a really fun experience. So I didn't do it like for publicity or something. I just did it because I wanted to share some of the experiences that I had.
Yeah, that was really great.
Yeah, and it was like a really awesome event. So one of the differences, what makes Biohacker Summit different from other events, is also that the community aspect, and like the expo area, there's the speakers, there's also the expo area where like all the different gadgets, technology. So yeah, it's a very wide range of experiences people can experience, and of course the sauna and the ice bath,
thermogenic spa. Yes.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So yeah, people are definitely, anyone who's never been to Finland, then they should definitely try to come
if you want to discover the roots and origin of sweat bathing and sauna, like that's the best place for it. And if you've been struggling to find the others, the other people who are your tribe, I mean, that's the place for sure. Make long time friends, and you don't know where you end up after that. Maybe doing some crazy breathing exercises with one of the top Wim Hof method experts, etc. So yeah, you most welcome. And Siim is going to be talking about metabolic flexibility there, and he's going to give the best keynote so far he has ever done on that topic. For sure. And and we also launched the Biohacker's Handbook there, first time kind of in a physical event. So it's going to be a hell of a party. So looking forward to that. And Siim is also helping us with these live shows, occasionally jumping in. There's interviews coming along. We continue again in August with Max Lugever, with Anthony Di Clementi, Molly Malouf. There's a bunch of great people coming live, and looking forward to those interviews as well. And thank you very much, Siim, for coming to the show and making the time to make it to the Biohacker Center studios here in Helsinki.
Yeah, of course. It's great.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Have a healthy, awesome weekend.